hybridization, is coming in, the new M5.
Not excited.
But from your perspective, okay, there's whether you like it or not, but how does it, what does your company, Carbahn look like in a world where these cars are hybridized?
Look, I'm also, and this sounds weird, I'm kind of an environmentalist for a car guy, which is why all my stuff's emissions legal. I don't take the catalytic converters off of it because we all have to live in this planet. So I'm fine with electric cars. I'm fine with hybrid cars, but I think there should be a percentage of the car market that is not.
Hello, and welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. I am Matt Farah, and today's episode is, as always, brought to you by Off the Record. We love Off the Record here at the Smoking Tire because they are in it for you. They're looking out for you. If you make a little boo-boo on the highway, or maybe a very big boo-boo on the highway, you're going to need good representation. And if you're somewhere outside of your normal comfort zone, you may have trouble finding it. That's where Off the Record comes in. They set you up with a qualified attorney where you got pulled over in order to fight that ticket on your behalf and keep those points off of your record. All you have to do is go to offtherecord.com/TST or use code TST Pod on the Off the Record app. Just download that app, have it handy in your phone. It makes using Off the Record even easier and more seamless than if you do it on the web. I have used it many, many times, and they have kept me motoring on points free. It is the best. Go to offtherecord.com/TST or use code TST Pod on the Off the Record app to get 10% off all legal services booked through Off the Record. All right, on today's program, it's a legend in the studio, car builder, engine builder, BMW guru, racer, and all-around nice guy. Steve Dinan is in studio, the founder of the legendary BMW tuning company with his name on it, but he no longer runs, is legendary within BMWs, and his new company, Carbahn, is, frankly, making even better stuff. Their kits are amazing for BMW, Mercedes, and coming soon, Audi. Let's get right to it. Steve Dinan is on the Smoking Tire Podcast. Let's go!
Cal Poly engineer worked for me for about 11 years. He used to work at the ARB.
Try to not talk like this so much,
okay.
Even though Zach is over there.
Right.
He'll know you're talking to him if you're talking to him.
You got to do this move where you're like,
anyway,
you do the.
He used to have a theory that you could gusset something, you use FEA, and you can do all this finagling to make something strong, or you can just make it bigger.
Yeah.
He would say that every time we talk about making something strong.
That's the American racing engines version of things, right?
Exactly. That was
right.
That was his thing. He would get a little more sexually graphic about it. Just give it a big woody.
Yeah, of course.
Just fuck it harder. Wait, what? How did I end up here? What?
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of his thing, though.
He better have been a well-buttressed gentleman. Otherwise, you could have thrown all the jokes right back at him.
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Yeah, no, you don't want to. That breaks HR rules.
Are we live? We exist?
We are good.
All right. Willkommen. Anybody who's checking us out live, we got going about 30 minutes early, and that's because what happens with this program a lot is people are so considerate, or they have to check out of their hotel, in your case, and they come to the studio early, which is, I appreciate. I'm a timely gentleman myself.
Yeah.
But then you know what happens, Steve Dinan? We fucking do the show in the lobby before we start recording. We talk about everything, and so I have to go run away and hide in my office.
That's okay.
So we don't give away what we can sell.
I don't mind waiting either. I just like being on time. That's all.
And Eric, my manager downstairs, who was talking to you, the Armenian homie, he's a huge fan of your entire career. He owns like 6 BMWs, and he's a big fan. So I said, let Eric have his 15, with Steve. Welcome back.
Yeah,
nice to see you.
Always love being here, man. I love your deal.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Thank you. We tend to feel the same way about the things that you build. There's a lot going on. You're now back in racing.
I am back.
You were out. They pulled you back in, but somebody else this time.
It's the same group I've been with since 2018. It was Audis, and then we went up to WeatherTech from Michelin Pilot in a Lamborghini Huracan. Then we lost our sponsor to IndyCar racing, so it's now an Arrow McLaren. And so now we're back to Michelin Pilot, GS again, and we're back in a BMW M4 now. So I haven't raced a BMW for a while. But.
So you've competed, or you've been principal or in charge of teams that have competed in GT cars, prototype sports cars. What else? Have you, do we have any Indy in there? Is there anything open wheel in there?
I used to be involved with Chip when he was in Indy, but I've never have been involved in Indy. I've always been an endurance sports car guy. But yeah, it's GT cars and prototype cars this is my 44th year in car racing.
Wow. Do you have a different approach? Because between if you're doing 24 hours of Daytona or a whole season, GT car versus prototype car, do you have to be in a different mental state of preparation, or not really?
I don't think it's a different mental state of preparation, but I will say that when you get to the faster cars, all the teams and all the engineers are better, and you better know what you're doing, or you're going to get your clock clean. Like people sometimes think because there's less cars in the faster class, like 10 cars as opposed to 25, that there's less competition.
Right.
No, there's just less cars.
Yeah, Toyota's got 5, and they put equal amounts of money behind each of them.
Yeah, but the engineering is so high, and the driver quality is so high, and the execution is so high that you just have to be on your game almost perfectly all the time. Where in the lower levels, there's enough people that are. I hate to use the word pretend to be professionals, but they're
Pro-Am series, right?
Yeah.
So
they're not on the same level. That you can make some mistakes once in a while, and you can still win. But at the upper level, it's harder. Yeah, but that's the only real difference is the quality of the people and the amount of money you have goes up.
Is the money spent? Is the spread of money spent in the lower classes wider than at those upper tiers? Like the upper tiers, is the minimum X and the highest one is just a little bit higher, or is there always a big spread?
I don't think it makes a difference whether you're in Formula One or IndyCar racing or your local SCCA club racing. The really good teams always spend about 20% more than the average team.
I think in Formula One it's more than 20%.
Well, but then the lower teams spend 40% less, but the average team is 20% less than the winners. I mean, there's a price. I always tell people when they want to get involved in racing, there's a price to show up, and there's a price to win. Yeah, and that's not the same price. And you can maintain the car, you can make it run, and you can finish in the back half of the pack for half as much money as you can win. But it takes more than everyone else from both an engineering and a financial standpoint to win consistently.
Why do you think? Do you think there's enough passion in racing that people are comfortable spending enough to get there, but knowing they can't spend enough to win and wanting to race anyway? Is it because they think that on any day it could be their day, or is it just the passion of the sport?
A lot of people are a little delusional about what it takes to win. It's not all about money. You have to spend the money in the right places with the right staff and skilled engineering and drivers. And some people who have a lot of money to spend on racing don't understand what it takes to win racing. Right, so money is not the only solution to the problem. Okay, it's just one of the many factors you have to have correct, right? But yeah, it takes engineering skill, it takes driving skill, and it takes management skill and money, and you have to have all those together. And in any racing series, there's even including Formula 1, there's 4 or 5 teams that are capable of winning right every weekend. And then they have everybody else that's racing also. Yeah, and of course, some of those people aspire to move to the top, like Haas does in Formula 1. They're getting better again. Like McLaren did. They were out for a while. Now they're back in again, probably the fastest car in Formula One. Some people aspire their whole lives and never get there because they don't understand what they don't know. You know what I mean? The definition of ignorance. I don't know what I don't know, so I don't know how to get there. Right? It took me a lot of years. I've been racing 44 years. It probably took me 15 to understand what I needed to do to get to the front. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to learn. It's very complicated.
Was there do you remember any light bulb moments that happened during years 12 through 15 where it really started to come together and you were like, oh shit?
Yeah, the biggest light bulb moment I ever had was when I used to think you had to have the fastest car to win a car race. And when I went to work with Chip, when we were doing engines for BMW corporate for Chip Ganassi and prototype racing, they would win half their races when they didn't have the fastest car. And
maybe they had the most fuel efficient car, or the fastest pit stops, or the most best tire wear, or something.
It was their total execution. Yeah, their tire degradation was lower than everybody else's. They made less mistakes. Their pit stops were better. Their strategy was better. They compensated for the fact that the car was a little off that day. in a more consistent way than anybody had ever worked with before. And that light bulb went off in my brain. That was like 2010. I go, you don't have the fastest car to win a car race.
Yeah.
It certainly helps, but it's not a requirement.
Sure.
I mean, you see that, especially earlier this season with Formula One, with Max was much better at tire deg than Checo, but than some of his competition. And I mean, they could be right with him, but as they got to lap 24, 5, 6, 7, he was using less tire somehow, but also going faster.
Yeah.
That literally happens in Days of Thunder.
Yeah,
really.
Like one of my fortes, and it's one of the
Crucial
things I learned from the gassy guys is how to have low tire deg when you set up a car.
Yeah.
And so I always have the lowest tire deg in my series. So I have really good long run car. Like at Indy, we qualified 5th. But by the end of the race, with everybody else with their tire deg, we just drove away from the field. I mean, we had so much pace on at the end of the race.
Does that apply, whatever theory that you're using in racing, apply to how you set up street cars, or is it such a different set of requirements that it doesn't really cross over?
Street cars are always so much softer because of the ride quality concern that they always have good tire deg. The problem with race cars is people think that stiffer's better.
Right.
People think that sometimes in street car suspensions too, but in racing it's very extreme. I'm give you an example.
In street cars, they're usually wrong.
Yeah. So in street cars usually wrong, but like for example, the M car out there, the spring rate is like 300-400 pounds. Race car, which weighs 600 pounds less, 1,000 pounds lighter. So a stiff and a soft race car is like a 900-pound per rate spring versus a 1,200-pound per rate spring. It's still 3 times as much as a street car. So it doesn't really correlate that much.
Right.
It's just a ride quality issue on a street car.
Right.
But a race car, the softer you can set it up and still have it be drivable, the longer the tires are going to last, because that energy from the spring rate or the dampers gets transmitted into the sidewall of the tire and makes the tire warm and makes the tire die.
What starts to happen with the car dynamically to be able to determine that it's too soft? What is the symptom of that line being crossed?
When you turn the steering wheel, the car's response characteristics are so quick when the car is soft, it kind of tucks, and then you have to catch the back end that the car becomes very hard to hang on to. And part of the reason professional...
It's not what I thought he was going to say. I thought you were going to say it was pushy or it was slow to respond.
No. It's the response characteristic of the car to transition from left to right. It becomes so sensitive that you have to be super smooth and very quick at catching the car. When you make a stiffer car, it becomes more benign from a characteristic standpoint, but it will flat slide earlier and it will kill the tires faster. And this is also why professional race car drivers get paid a lot. A professional race car driver can hang on to a free, soft car, and an amateur gets scared. And he wants the security of making the car stiffer so it doesn't move around so much on him.
Right.
That's why pros are pros. I mean, that's
I never thought that softer would make. I mean, I guess yes, you have more weight transfer, so it makes it a little sloppier, right? But that's not what I would have. I would have thought that stiffer meant twitchier, but maybe it just means it reduces that gray area between grip and slip.
Well, it removes this movement when the car is stiffer, and less movement means the car's not going to do anything I don't want it to do.
Right.
Now, you can make a car so stiff that it will skip, and like you're talking, it will go sideways. You can make it way too stiff. But I'm not talking that kind of stuff. I'm talking about, a 900-pound per inch spring on a GS car versus 1,000 or 1,200, kind of thing.
And then when there's that discrepancy between the pro and the amateur, who do you favor?
That's a tough one, I mean,
the guy writing the checks or the guy cashing them.
I mean, you always win the race with the closer, and the closer is always the pro.
Yeah.
So if you want to win a race, it has to be good for him. But it also can't be so bad that the starting driver, and it depends on the quality of your starting driver. We happen to have a very good one right now, Sean McAllister. He's amazingly good, actually. That he has got to be able to hang on to the car until the pro gets in, because if he wrecks it, you don't have anything to finish the race with. Yeah. Right? But you can also do some things that make them both happy. For example, my closer, Jeff, he likes a freer car. Sean likes a little more understeering car. And I did too because I was never a real pro. I was just pretty good as a race car driver. I liked a little bit more understeer, especially on corner entry. But I found that I can dial in a more understeer on entry to the car by the spring shock bar relationship in the back of the car that makes Sean happy, that doesn't hinder Jeff on the way out. What Jeff doesn't like is an understeering car on exit, because he has to wait to get on the power. Yeah. So I found that I makes the car secure in entry for Sean, and make it what we call pointy or more free on exit for Jeff, and I can get what they both like.
Oh,
I can get them within a few tenths of each other.
Oh, that's pretty
on
cool.
lap time wise, like 3 or 4 tenths.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And they're both happy. That's a hard combination
That's
to
a
hit.
tough one to nail.
You
Yeah,
can't change those settings when
that's
you come in
super
for driver
tough.
change.
Yeah. And that's on this GS car.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is this a good race car?
It's a great race car.
Is it?
Yeah. It's one of the best race cars I've ever had.
Really? In
Yeah.
what way?
Well, first of all, excuse me, it's very kind to the tires. And since it's so big and tall, you'd think
Sensing
it
a
wouldn't
recurring
be,
theme here.
but it is. And then I'm good at setting up long run cars, and me and the car get along really well. We have a relationship, which you get with a machine.
Yeah.
People think machines don't talk to you, but they do. You just have to know how to listen.
How physically?
That's what I drove at Thermal, actually. I mean, M4 GT4. It's
Yeah.
a big vehicle.
Yeah, the other nice thing is it has a really great air conditioning system. I know
It
that
does.
sounds like a big deal.
that's
It does.
important.
It has holes in the seat with a grid, and it blows cold air on your spine from the
Yeah.
air
I got
conditioning
cold,
system.
and it was 90
And-
degrees outside. I had to turn
Yeah.
off and on.
So when you're hot and tired at the end of the race, it makes all the difference in the world in your freshness.
Yeah, I drove
know.
Will Turner's M8 a couple
Yeah.
years ago that had that, and it was kick ass.
Yeah, it's
it was
neat.
a great
It's neat.
time. So
Yeah.
how actually big is this car compared to like the old M8 or the M6 race cars? Guys, got to take a quick break. The holiday season is coming up, and now it's time that you think about the Smoking Tires' longest running sponsor. You know him. I love him. Dylan Optics sunglasses made right here in the USA, Arizona. They are the best. I've been wearing these things since 2010. I wore them before they paid me to. Literally, McConaughey gets that line, but I lived it first. I bought a pair of Dylan Optics. They saw me wearing the Dylan Optics. I love them so much, and they said, hey, we're a new company, and we want to sponsor your channel. 2010. We're looking at almost 15 years later. Dylan is still here. They are always expanding styles and offerings. They've got over 10 different frame styles and then all the different colored lenses. You can make a totally unique pair of sunglasses. You'll never see another one like it out in the crowd. And if you go to thesmokingtire.com on the partners page and click on that Dylan banner, we'll give you a free TST t-shirt for ordering a pair of sunglasses. Holidays are coming up. Get a pair for the one you love. Get them a gift certificate. Let them customize them themselves. They make awesome gifts because they're awesome glasses. Everywhere I go, people are like, are those fogged up? I'm like, no, they're just more awesome. And then I let people try them on. They can't believe you can see through them because of the matte finish, and then you can. And then they're like, oh my God, this glass is so good. So get them through our website, thesmokingtire.com, in the partners tab, and we'll send you a free t-shirt as a little token of our appreciation. And before we get back to the action, we have a new collaboration coming. I love doing collabs with people who make really good stuff. And I love a good pen, and I love the tactile turn pens. Found them a couple years ago, started buying pens. And after we did the watch thing with Notice, it was like, hey, can we make a Smoking Tire pen? And we did, and it sold out very quickly. So we're making another one, new color, new fun, fidgety, clicky mechanism you can annoy your coworkers with. We don't have the actual item to share just yet, but it's going to be for patrons only. So if you're interested in that, you must be a TST patron, which you do at patreon.com/thesmokingtirepodcast. And now, back to the program.
Well, it's smaller than that still, but it's big compared to an old 3 Series like
Yeah.
an E46 or an E36. But it belies its weight. Yeah, there's Sean and Jeff.
Well, what is it? What does the race car weigh?
Oh, these days like 3,300
Well, that's a lot lighter than the street car.
Yeah, my
Certainly.
street car is 3,750, so it's
Yeah.
like 500 pounds less than
Yeah.
But it's still a big car. I mean, when I was a kid, race cars weighed 2,000, 2,500
Yeah.
pounds.
Yeah, yeah.
They had side draft Webers in them. I mean, it was like lightness was the thing, right?
Yeah.
Now the cars are a lot faster, even though they're a lot bigger and a lot heavier, just because the technology has improved so much in every way, aerodynamically, tires,
Yeah.
dampers, shift speeds, ABS.
They're using the factory automatics in these?
Yeah, it's 8-speed automatic.
Yeah.
ZF, great gearbox.
Which is wild, right? That the race car is using that.
It works really good. I mean,
and what is the powertrain difference from a street car?
It's detuned 150 horsepower.
Okay.
So the race car has 400 horsepower. The street car comes with 550, and then the road car you're testing is 750. So the road car has 350 more horsepower than the race car. It used to be the other way around when I was a kid as well.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is an engine lasts a year.
Yeah.
Like you put one in at the year, and it lasts the entire season. You don't, other than changing spark plugs and the oil, you don't have to do anything with it, which is why they do it. But the other reason they do it is they're racing against all kinds of different cars, like Porsche Caymans and stuff that don't have 600 horsepower.
Yeah.
So they take the fast cars and slow them down, the slow cars and speed them up to try and make them all the same. So the racing is better. So
have they done a good job? Is the racing better?
I mean, it's closer than it used to be in the old days. It used to be if you had a dominant car, you could lap the whole field every race, and it was legal.
Yeah.
You don't get away with that anymore. As soon as you start outperforming everyone, they reel you back in. But do they make them all exactly equal? No. They have a problem with equalizing lap times, but not equalizing how they make the lap time. So for example, this car is the slowest car on the straightaway. So we get to places like Road Atlanta, mile-long straightaway. Literally we qualified 5th, and by the time we were 30 minutes in the race, we were 9th. Every time we get in the straightaway, somebody just motored by us and pulled back in.
Sure.
It's not
so
raceable.
the formula isn't optimized for every track. But if you're on some super short track with a short straight, you might the advantage might actually be potentially in your favor.
Or even the characteristic of the track, like Indianapolis, we won, and it has a super long straightaway too, but there's a right-hand corner onto the straightaway, and the car was handling so well, we were flat through the last corner, everybody else was lifting.
Oh, okay.
We were coming onto the straightaway 2 or 3 miles an hour more top speed, and then it didn't look like we were down on power.
But that's a pretty, but you got to admit that's a pretty tough job for the regulators because every track is different. Like, there's just no way they could know.
No.
This set of compensatory measures will affect on these 3 tracks, but not these 3 tracks. Will have the opposite effect on those 3 tracks.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It is very tough. Like we were at Watkins Glen, and Watkins Glen has so many long, fast corners, and we had such a good handling car. We had a half second on the entire field just because of the characteristic of the racetrack.
Yeah.
And then we get to Road Atlanta, and we get motored by 9 people down the back straightaway. Yeah. And we honestly wound up finishing 3rd at Road Atlanta. What I did was I pulled him out of the pack. We got to our go-home point and put him in clean air because the car would turn a lap time. And by the time everybody pitted, we were back in 2nd place.
Oh, okay. So then, you were able to strategize back in the game.
Yeah, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't. Depends on how the race flows, right? And then the good news is there was no yellow to the end of the race. So we had a 2-second gap on 3rd place, and they would gain a half second down the straightaway. We'd pull a half second back in the corners. We did that for like an hour. But if a yellow flag would have come out, 9 people would have passed us again on the restart, and we would have been back to 9th or 10th again. So it's a hard way to race.
Yeah.
The best thing about BMWs and the road cars and the race car is they're so benign on the limit. Like a lot of cars, especially mid-engine cars, you lift up the gas, they want to go, Porsches and Lamborghinis because all the mass back there with the motor and everything. But these things, because they're a little bit nose heavy, when you lift up the gas, they just understeer less.
Oh.
Right, so they don't want to spin out on you ever. So they're super easy cars on the limit, friendly cars to drive fast. You could argue ultimately a car that's a little more sharp edge mid-engine would probably be faster, but they've taken care of that with the BOP.
Sure.
Right, so in the end, all cars are performing about the same, and the BMW is the easiest one to drive. And the coolest on the inside, which fatigues you less. So it's just a very user-friendly car.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
I agree. What is the front tire size you're running?
We run 300 millimeters all the way around.
Okay. Because I drove this car, well, not that car, but I went to this Hoosier event, and when we got in the car, they say, do not try to slide this car or don't do it by accident because you don't have much steering angle correction because the front tires are so wide. So the U-turn, if you wanted to U-turn the race car, it would be, you'd need an extra lane compared to the street car. So I was just curious how much wider it was.
They do limit the steering lot to lock, but the race tires on it. But on the racetrack, we've never had a steering limit. It's got plenty of steering
of course,
angle.
they have plenty of room.
I've never tried to parallel park it.
Yeah.
But
they were telling
you ever try to do like
myself,
a 30-degree drift with one?
Yeah, it'll do that.
No, they were telling us, like, don't do that because it won't do that, and you'll hit that wall where people hit that wall. Like, they pointed at a specific wall. So I was just curious how wide the tires were.
It's been a great race car. I've had a lot of really good race cars, but that's a great race. I've had some bad race cars, but I don't want to say bad things about people, so I'm not going to mention who they are. I bought some race cars I would never recommend buying.
That's awesome.
How much downforce does this car make, and how does that come into play with the spring rate?
Not a lot. We're running, we pull about 1.5 Gs. And to give you a reference, the road car I gave you pulls 1.2.
Yeah. So
both impressive numbers, though.
Yeah, that's an impressive number for a road car.
Yeah, but if you're going past 1.2 on the street, you've got some fucking mental issues probably.
Yeah, depending on the asphalt, that car does 1.1 to 1.2 Gs.
What's on Cup 2R
the
tires?
Yeah, probably 2/10 that's the tires.
Yeah,
but these are full-blown Michelin slicks. Michelin racing tires, and it pulls 1.5 with the whatever aero we have. It's not a lot. I've never taken it to the wind tunnel. It's not legal, but it has some downforce.
Do you guys have in this series limits on testing other than wind tunnel? Can you rent a racetrack all you want? And go,
no, in Michelin Pilot you can test as much as you want as long as you don't test at the racetrack you're going to race at within 10 days of the race.
Okay.
I think is what the exact rule is.
Sure.
But yeah, so we
because the conditions of a racetrack change that rapidly. Of course.
Yes. Yeah, they do.
Sure, I get that. Okay.
But we're not allowed to do simulations, so we can't do shaker rigs. We can't do wind tunnels. So what the big guys do is they go shaker rigs and wind tunnels, and they're not allowed to do testing. I would argue that testing costs less money than the shaker rig and the wind tunnels. So the original reason they supposedly made testing illegal was to reduce cost.
You can do one or the other?
No, in the big cars they can't do testing.
Like the LMP1.
Oh, the LMP.
Like when I was in GTD, which is GT3, the Lamborghini Huracan, we were allowed 4 test days a year.
That's not a lot.
4 tests a year. That's it.
Yeah.
But you're allowed to, if you're an amateur racer, you can't do shaker or wind tunnel. You only get 4 tests. If you're in pro GTD, then you can do wind tunnel and shaker rig testing.
Okay.
And you get 10 test days. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to limit the cost.
Yeah.
So the Pro-Am combination, you're allowed to do less simulation, less testing to keep the cost of the Pro-Am program down. Then you have to race against the pro cars on the track at the same time, the same car, which is kind of lousy. Like they give the people with more money and more pro drivers and more technology more tests so they can beat you even more.
Yeah.
So when you run with them, it's really fun.
The headlights come up from behind real fast.
Yeah, I mean, when you can race with them, we raced at Road America in the Lamborghini GTD car, and we were, I think it was us and Turner were like second or third and fourth behind the 2 pro cars closing down on them like we were going to pass them, and these guys had twice the budget we did. It's always really fun when that happens.
It's happened this year a couple times. I've reported on some races where the pro or the AM cars caught or passed. Yeah. It's finished a lot better than some of the pro cars. It's wild.
Yeah, it's neat. It's neat when that happens.
Yeah.
I would argue that testing is a lot less money than shaker rigs and wind tunnels and simulations, and so I think allowing that and not allowing testing is a silly rule. But that rule was created a long time ago before we had shaker rigs and wind tunnel testing available to people, and the rules kind of just stuck over the ages.
That's so funny. It seems like an easy one to change.
You would think.
Wonder where they draw the line at test day. Like, is it if you start the car at a racetrack? Is that a test day?
You can't go to a racetrack and run the car at all, even one lap.
Okay.
But there's also these little loopholes. Like if you know you're going to race in WeatherTech next year in GTD, but you haven't signed up for the racing series and you bought a car in July, you can test for 4 months until you enter the series. And then you enter the series in December. You've already done a whole season with testing.
I support this scam. That's a good scam.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of things like that you can do.
Every year you keep them hanging up. Are you going to run next year? I don't know. Maybe. I'll let you know in like September.
Yeah. And the old days before there was a testing rule, when we were in pro racing, we would go to every racetrack 2 weeks before the race, and get us set up for the race. So we had 12 races. We do a full tour of the whole. So we do 24 races a year.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I wonder, are there? Have you heard? I mean, I'm sure you deal with a lot of high end clients. Is there anyone who has one of these teams that has like a membership at a thermal or an Autobahn just test their car like straight up at the country club?
And that's the other thing too is you can buy another car exactly like it and say it's my track day car.
Right. That's a good scam too.
Yes, but the problem with that is Michelin regulates how many tires you're allowed to have. Oh. So you have to run them like Pirellis or...
So you can't get it exact. You can practice, but it's not...
You can learn some things about the car, but the tires change the characteristics of the car a lot. So you can't get Michelins to run if you're racing in the Michelin series.
Right. That's fun. That's a good... Okay, I support both the scam and the response.
I'll tell the story. I'll tell the story quickly because I know Matt's heard it. But I went to this racing school, and this one guy was 6 seconds faster than everybody else in the school. And I said, "How are you so fast?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I used to campaign a Hendrix time attack car." And I couldn't find any information about that. So I texted a friend of mine who races NASCAR, and I said, "What's a Hendrix time attack car?" And he said, "Oh, early 2000s, NASCAR started limiting the amount of test days you could do. So Hendrix started selling consumer-grade time attack cars, and boy, gee, howdy, did their road course work get real good that year."
So, yeah, I think good scam, good response. I like it.
Yeah, so what the big teams do is they just put it like in Formula One and IndyCar, they put a shaker rig in the building, and then they put the simulate on the racetrack at the shaker rig before they go to the racetrack, and the door is closed, and
how
there's not spies inside the building looking to see what you're doing. So
how
it's
effective is that?
It's effective.
Is it?
Shaker rigs have gotten quite good over the years. If you have a 7 poster, I mean, they'll simulate downforce and yaw, and I mean, they're, I don't know what they cost these days. Last time I priced one, the machine was $500,000. You need 5 people to run it.
Is there any driver involvement in shaker rig, or is it just a simulation of the track done and fully automated?
Yeah, they just put weight in the car to simulate the driver, and the car runs without anybody sitting in it. Now, we go to the shaker rig every time we buy a car. We went with this one. Mm-hmm. We just do what we call sine sweeps, where you just oscillate the car up and down, and you get the damping to match the springs.
Right.
So that the car doesn't bounce, and you can also figure out which damper setting gives you the most amount of grip and which one gives you the most pitch and roll control.
Okay.
And you can get like a window, like this makes the car more secure and easier to drive, like we were talking about earlier. This one makes the car have more grip. It's hard to hang on to. This is my softest and my stiffest window. And then on my setup sheet, I have a maximum and minimum damping number, and it adds up all the damping forces together and comes up with a value. And it lights up red when it goes outside the window, so I know that I've gone outside the window.
Sure.
Right.
Are you guys showing up to this rig with like 30 dampers, each one incrementally different, or are you taking apart, rebuilding, reinstalling?
In this class, damper change is illegal.
Oh.
And the dampers are sealed.
Oh,
so
okay.
We've never
so what can you adjust?
Well, they're adjustable compression rebound.
That's it. You got like knobs, like consumer shit?
Like consumer shit.
How many clicks?
18.
So you got 18 clicks a corner.
Yes.
That's all.
Compression and rebound.
And all of this shit is to choose a click.
Yes.
Listen, you people at home cannot be trusted to adjust your own goddamn suspension.
Oh, no.
There's no way. Imagine they're just selling this shit to people. People are going, you know what? I like 7 clicks. Like, you don't know shit, homie.
We go to the shaker rig for 2 days to find the click window. Wow. And then we do 6 days on the racetrack to do dynamic characteristics. So we've got like $300,000 in to figure out where the clicker should be on the car.
And then let me ask you something. And then when you get the number right, what do you do? Paint marker, dot?
It's slightly different per track, and I just have a setup sheet, and it says this track needs 17, this one needs 15.
Right, and you have to fucking go to 0 and go 1, 2, 3.
Well, no, they're marked. They're marked 1 through 18 on a wheel.
All right, at least they're marked.
Little pointer, and so.
The consumer ones, you got to wind it back to 0 and go, which way was 0? I don't know.
It's like a rotary phone.
Count your
clicks. Now, when you go up to WeatherCheck and GTD, there are 3-way dampers. You have a high and low speed compression and rebound.
All right, so a little more. But still knobs.
Still knobs, and you're still not allowed to revalve the dampers.
Wow.
And then when you get to LMDH, the prototype cars, I believe dampers are 5-way, because I think you have a high and low speed compression rebound and a blow off valve.
Oh,
and
wow.
I think revalving is open. I don't know. I haven't raced in that class in a long time, so you can get more creative in that class. And again, as the class goes up, the amount of engineering you can do goes up. And part of what
the amount of engineering you have to do goes up.
They're assuming you don't have a damper engineer on staff if you're racing a GS car. Excuse me. Yeah. And they assume that you do if you're running an LMDH car.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you need a damper engineer. And if you're in IndyCar racing, and I think Formula 1 still too, they have inerters. I mean, you know what that is?
A what?
Inerters.
Inerters?
Yes.
INERT.
Yeah.
What is an inerter?
It's like an energy-absorbing flywheel that's inside the damper that when the push rod goes down, it spins. And it stops the car from bouncing up and down based on the inertia of the mass of the car that's unsprung.
So wait, is it a gyroscope effect, or is it
it's like a flywheel,
and
it has like a ball screw going through like a CNC machine. And when you take a small mass, you spin it very high.
Yeah.
It simulates the mass of the things you can't damp.
Oh, wow.
And so what it does is it keeps the aero platform more consistent, so the car doesn't bounce, so your downforce on the car is more consistent.
So there's like $1,200 a set?
I don't know, but on e-cars, they have an inverter damper guy and a hydraulic damper guy, and they have to get together and decide, is this an inverter problem or is this a damping problem? They also have
Or you could just go to space.
This is, that's the most boring conversation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's really
no, not
you
you.
can really geek out on it.
Not you talking to me about it. I'm talking about the inerter talking to the hydraulic guy. That will put a crowd to sleep.
But I would love to see a fist fight between those two people if they're like, it's an inerter, it's a fight.
You can definitely get it wrong, and the car can bounce more. The relationship of the two is really important.
Yeah, I bet.
Wow.
And then they also have inerters now that use like little paddle wheels. So instead of having a mass, that paddle wheel goes through the fluid and damps the up and down.
Yeah, like swimming with one of those gloves on. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but either way, it's a valve or a piston goes up and down, and a rotational mass or hydraulic rotational paddle wheel that damps the part you can't damp because the unsprung parts are not damped.
Right.
So they also have what they call mass dampers. This is what Red Bull got in trouble with years ago when they had, what was the guy's name before Verstappen? Vettel. When he won 4 championships. They put a big heavy weight on a spring inside the nose of the car and a body at rest once they're made at rest. So when the car would move up and down, the mass had a spring on it. It would stay stationary. It would stop the oscillation of the car.
That's a good one.
Here, this will really explain how an inverter works.
Oh yeah, there you go. There it is.
Calculus.
Cool.
So what happened is they made, and by the way, they have mass dampers in high-rise buildings too to stop from swaying in the wind.
I've seen.
So they made that same thing in the nose of the car, and then finally, like after they won 4 championships in a row, they found out they had it. And so they made it illegal. But then what they did, they put inverters inside the damper so you couldn't find them.
Wow.
And then,
this is like the seakeepers on the boats. Have you seen those? You ever see a seakeeper on a boat?
No.
It's a huge gyroscope that is, depending on how big your boat is, it starts at maybe the size of a beach ball for like a 25 to 30 foot boat. And then it could be as big as a fucking Volkswagen if you have a 200-foot boat.
It stops the boat from rocking.
And it stops the boat from rocking.
Yeah, same kind of thing.
It is, I have experienced it myself, it is the coolest.
Yeah.
You turn your boat 90 degrees to the waves, so they're coming across your side.
Right.
Hit the button, and within about 5 seconds, the boat stops moving.
That's cool.
It's crazy.
Well, anyway, so when they finally put in the shock, and then they got away with it for 3 or 4 more years, in both IndyCar and Formula One, and they finally gave up and said, okay, inverters are legal. Because they just figured out they couldn't police them. I think is what the reality of it was.
Pulling the shocks apart, which would be, kind of a...
And then,
are they allowed to pull the shock? I guess if they inspect a car, they could tear it down.
They can inspect anything they want.
Yeah.
But in our class, we have spec dampers, and the dampers are sealed from the manufacturer of the damper, and they have a sticker on them and a QR code. And I'm sure some people are getting creative. There's so many things you can do to the car that make it handle well and we don't have the money. That's part of the problem with this kind of class is we don't have the money to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars cheating on dampers. We don't even bother.
Sure.
They come the way they
There's
come.
There's cheaper ways to cheat is what you're trying to say.
There's always cheaper ways to cheat.
Let's talk about street cars. Race cars are good, but you're also in the street car business. You have always sort of been able to, move with the times, moving from, the old school BMW 6 cylinders to the forced induction stuff, and now we've got hybridization. Is coming in the new M5.
Not excited.
Yeah, and Zach and I recently drove the new Mercedes C63. Talk about not excited. Yikes.
Yeah.
So what does your company, Carbahn, look like in a world where these cars are hybridized?
Well, I mean, you can always make a car go faster and handle better, right? And so we're still going to modify them because that's what we do for a living. Are we excited about the change? No. I truly believe that. Look, I'm also, and this sounds weird, I'm kind of an environmentalist for a car guy, which is why all my stuff's emissions legal. I don't take the catalytic converters off of it because we all have to live in this planet. So I'm fine with electric cars. I'm fine with hybrid cars, but I think there should be a percentage of the car market that is not.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if half the cars in the world are commuter cars and they're like big golf carts, that's fine. That electric cars are great for driving around town. They're clean. They're quiet. I get it. If I was commuting every day in a big city, I'd want an electric car too. Like if I was stuck in LA traffic, I'd probably want one, honestly.
Yeah.
And a hybrid car is great for long trips because it gives you range and great gas mileage. But for a performance car that you want to stop and turn, a car that weighs 5,300 pounds is a bad thing. And it seems to me like we should get enough carbon credits for the electric and hybrid cars that we could make some good old-fashioned gasoline cars that would still be legal to sell. I'm not sure if they have to make it hybrid or whether they're just doing it to bring the tax down, the gas guzzler tax down in the car. I'm not sure what the motivation is. I'm not a car company, so I don't know what world they have to live in, which I'm sure is much more difficult than the world I have to live in.
Right, yeah.
But it seems to me like we should be able to make super performance cars light and good handling and stop. I find that electric cars and hybrid cars are one-dimensional from a performance standpoint, which is always a straight line.
Yeah, I mean certainly some of them do handle well enough. I mean, I've driven, Taycan Turbo GT and stuff that is so, fast that I made myself kind of sick driving it.
Yeah.
But your point is valid nonetheless. Yeah. I mean, a McLaren, at 3,000 pounds or 2,800 pounds is in my opinion, and I'm sure this could be measured very easily, although I haven't done it myself, is probably a similar amount of fuel efficiency to a Ferrari 296 with its hybrid system and downsized engine.
Yeah.
But from your perspective, okay, there's whether you like it or not, but how does it make your job? How does it change? Okay, now I've got to integrate what I'm doing with a hybrid system. Does that add a whole level of fuckery that is not fun?
Yeah, it makes the whole tuning process a lot more complicated and a lot more expensive. And honestly, if we just took the hybrid system off the car and saved 800 pounds, it would probably do as much as I think I could do to tune the car.
That's probably true.
The problem is it's so integrated into the car now that removing it without setting a plethora of faults and warnings that you could never get rid of is virtually impossible. I mean, it's tough.
To what degree can you modify the internal combustion engine on a car like that without really touching the hybrid system?
You can.
You cannot?
You can.
You can.
We've already done the new XM and the new X5M and X6M hybrid, which was now an S68 instead of an S63. But it's essentially the same 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8 that has a hybrid system attached to it. And we've already tuned them, and they make power just like the old ones do.
And it doesn't confuse the hybrid system?
Doesn't seem to.
Okay.
It doesn't seem to. So you can add the same 100 or 150 horsepower to it.
Okay.
But you're starting with a 5,300-pound car instead of like my M8 that you had last time here.
Yeah.
It was 4,150 pounds, and the M5 is 5,280. So it's like 1,130 pounds. I mean, you know how much power you have to add to compensate for 1,130 pounds?
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot.
A lot.
Hundreds.
Yeah, hundreds. And then it still won't stop and turn because it weighs 1,100 pounds more.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping they don't do it to the little cars like the M2, M3, M4. I think if they do, it will end M. I'm hoping Porsche still keeps, 911 Turbo S's and GT3s, pure. I don't know. I mean,
I think that their GT cars will remain naturally aspirated as long as they can.
Yeah,
and will remain even if they have to become turbocharged at some point. I think they will continue to build naturally aspirated GT cars.
Yeah, I think they'll go turbo because you almost sort of have to because of the power density of them. But I think they'll stay away from hybrid as long as possible.
I did drive the 911 GTS hybrid.
Yeah.
Which only adds 160 pounds.
That's not bad.
Which is not terrible. I mean, it's more than you'd want, but dynamically you don't feel like you're driving a house.
Yeah.
And it does make the power band incredibly broad and useful. And they've done some creative things in terms of, okay, well, we have a battery which adds weight, but we can run with one larger turbo because we can fill it here. So they've at least done it's not terrible. It's not terrible.
A lot of the supercars weigh like 150 to 250 pounds more.
The Artura and stuff.
And they run great. And I think that's a really good compromise for a performance car. Why the M5 had to gain over 1,000 pounds to become hybrid, I'm confused.
My guess is.
Does the 911 have any EV-only range?
No.
I think that's
so.
Why.
I think it's the difference of do you want to be able to drive on electricity only or do you not? So the supercars, for the most part, you can't drive on electricity only.
Yeah.
The Artura is probably the longest range, and you can drive for 10 miles or something. Right. It's not. But if you want to put a car where you can go 40 or 50 miles, that's where you get your 1,000-pound battery.
Yeah, I mean, like the 919 prototype car they ran at Le Mans. It was electric in the front and gasoline in the rear, and it didn't weigh very much more, and it made like 1,000 or 1,200 horsepower. It was really cool. So, I mean, you can do a really neat performance job of that.
Yeah.
But I don't think a mainstream electric-only version of car should be a high-performance car. I'm not against
totally
hybrids.
Agree.
I'm not against
I totally
hybrids.
agree. Yeah,
You know,
like
I mean,
a regular 5 Series hybrid that has 50 miles of range and and in a regular inline 6 for whatever.
Yeah.
Like great.
Yeah,
but
it's a commuter car. It's a daily car. But a performance car should be a performance car, and weight should be part of the criteria.
I agree.
I mean, honestly, I think that's going to be a huge market for the pre-hybrid cars. Like my M8 and the last M5, which is the lightest one they made. It was 100 pounds lighter than the previous M5, the F10. Even with the all-wheel drive, because of all the carbon and stuff they did to the car. So it's the lightest big car they ever made with the most amount of power, with all-wheel drive. I think those are going to be instant collector's items.
An interesting prediction.
Yeah, I'm keeping my M8, the one you drove. As soon as this car came out, I go, that's the last good car I'm ever going to own. I'm going to keep that one.
that one was nice. I liked that one.
It was a neat car.
I really like what Alpina was doing with the 8 Series too. Their B8 was rad.
Neat car.
Really, really good car. I really enjoyed that one.
No, I like that generation of BMW. Honestly, the generation of BMW we just went through, the M4 you have downstairs and the M5, M8 before, the F90, I think is the best M cars ever made.
You're not alone in thinking that, but I don't love the current M3 and M4 series. They're fast, they're well executed, but they just don't excite me at all.
Yeah, okay.
They don't do anything for me. I don't know. They feel too big. They're either too stiff in some ways and too technical with too many features and buttons and shit and I don't. It's hard to find enough room to really run them as fast as they can go, and I don't think they're that fun at lower speeds. I think they're just too big and heavy, and they don't do it for me.
See, I like the all-wheel drive on the new ones because when you get up north of 500 horsepower, two-wheel drive becomes unusable. It's just sideways all the time. You can't hook it up. So I like the all-wheel drive, and I like the level of sophistication that brings to the car from a traction standpoint and the usability standpoint. Like this car. I've driven it a lot. Obviously, I've had it for 18 months. Is the fastest car in a two-lane country road from point A to point B I've ever built. And I'm not talking by a little bit. I'm talking by a lot.
Sure.
Right? So if your goal to make a performance car is make more performance, it checks that box better than any car I've ever made.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't. For me, the fastest cars that I drive aren't always the most interesting or exciting, and the ones I relate to the best.
Yeah. Are there cars that you love, Steve, that may not be the fastest thing, but in your past even are like, ooh, that's really enjoyable, or that had the right amount of spice and flavor, even though it was.
No, he said his favorite car is always the next car. Last time you were here, it was always the
the
next
last
car.
time I was here, I talked about an E46 M3 I did for my one of my sponsors' kids. Remember that?
Yeah.
I did a coilover kit. That's still a phenomenal car because it's so light and so tactile. I mean, it's not super powerful, but it's just really enjoyable to drive. It does everything you ask it to do. It's pre-computer almost everything except for the engine.
Yeah.
A manual gearbox. I like that car a lot.
What do you think of like E30? If you drive an E30 today,
I used to have an E30 street car, the S14 4-cylinder M3, and I also had a race car, an SCCA race car with that same thing, and it was a really fun car to drive. I mean, underpowered.
Yeah.
I mean, significantly underpowered, but I also did a turbo kit for that back in the day. So I made a 350 horsepower
S14.
S14.
That was a good time.
It was a neat car.
Yeah.
And we put a wing on it and a splitter, and it was really quick. But like I say, I always like the new car because they're always better. But because of what's happening with the new M5, and if it happens with the M3 M4, they go with a heavy hybrid. I think next time you see me, my answer will be different.
Yeah,
I think it will be the last one.
Right.
Because I'm a road racer, and I like lightweight, and I like stopping, and I like turning as much or more than I like going in a straight line. And if I can't do that anymore, then for me the car's not fun anymore.
Well, you just said before we started recording downstairs, you just said like, can you believe that Chevy is selling an almost 1,100 horsepower Corvette?
Yeah. Yes.
So that car's pretty light, or is going to be pretty light for what it is.
Yeah.
It's mid-engine. It's seems to have the goods.
Yeah.
Does that kind of stuff excite you?
I think a car with that much power should be all-wheel drive. No, I'm serious. I mean, I think with two-wheel drive and the mass of the engine in the back and the turbos, that car is going to be a real handful.
Yeah. It might be.
I mean, if the electronics are very good, then maybe people won't crash them. But
the electronics are pretty good. I mean, that performance traction management thing that GM does is pretty good. It's got a bunch of incremental settings, and they make it pretty hard to turn off.
Yeah.
There's not so much. You got to go through enough steps where you can't do a hold my beer situation, because you really have to think about how to get to full off. It's harder than you think.
I would wonder.
Well, that's probably wise of them.
Yes, definitely.
I would wonder at what point. Like, at what speed is that car actually deploying its full power? Because it's not first, second, third gear, maybe not even fourth.
Yeah,
so then
I would assume it has torque management in the lower gears as well.
Definitely.
But you know what the aftermarket will do?
Yeah.
They'll reprogram and turn the torque management off, so it will lay rubber all the way up through fourth gear, and then the car is completely undrivable,
right?
Just because they can.
Yeah,
I
mean, but we had the Z06 with the naturally aspirated engine for 5 days, and that's a ton of car. It's. I mean, obviously there's a because they can about this, and they, Corvette likes to come in with a big gun and one up everybody and cool, but I don't know anybody who's driven a Z06 and go, you know what I'm thinking? Maybe 400 more horsepower is what we need in this same car.
No,
that's so much power, that car.
To me, power should be usable, and part of the reason I told you I like the new cars is because they're all-wheel drive. If that car was all-wheel drive, and you could actually hook that up and it would drive away with that kind of power, I go, okay, that's neat.
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to be boost by gear for launches.
No, but that's also like the 919 Porsche we were talking about, and a lot of the other supercars are hybrid in the front and gasoline in the rear, and they use the computer to manage the torque split. And you can make some 800, 900,000 horsepower cars that honestly are actually usable. I mean,
well, the Lamborghini Revuelto is a new one that has 3 motors, 2 in the front, and then 1 in the dual clutch gearbox, or it replaces the flywheel.
Right.
And then it's got a naturally aspirated V12.
Yeah.
And it does that pretty effectively, actually. And and you can launch it. It does, and you actually can really know that it's working because that naturally aspirated engine has no balls below 5,000 RPM. So the electric motors are really doing a lot of work at the bottom.
Yeah. It's not the American way, though. Look, the American way is always more cubic inches.
Dude, but I understand because I'm not a race car driver.
Yeah.
I like a car to be a little sketchy.
Yeah.
I want a car that I should get a medal for not dying in it.
Okay.
I like
That's
the Carrera GTs, stuff, the early 911 turbos, the stuff that people are like, you're driving that? I like that.
See, I like the car where you lift up the gas, you turn, it goes exactly where you put it.
Sure.
It pulls 1.2 Gs in the corner, and you put your foot to the floor, and it drives up the corner and doesn't do anything.
That's why you win races.
That's what I like.
My strategy does not win races. My strategy is there's a car sliding out of turn 4. What are you doing? You could have just done that if instead of joining.
I raced a car back in the day with 750 horsepower and 900 pound-feet of torque and with 2-wheel drive, and it was terrifying. But it was still. I agree. It was fun.
Yeah,
it was crazy. It was exciting.
Yeah.
It's not efficient.
No.
The modern car with half the power is 10 seconds a lot faster.
Sure.
just because of how everything works better. Of
course. Well, if we're driving on the street, then the maximum attack mode doesn't really matter. So if we want to get the excitement at a lower speed or lower commitment, and that's when you get to sketchy.
There's not much you can do with over 500 horsepower on the street, realistically.
Yeah.
Beyond that, you're either doing something so deeply antisocial that you probably shouldn't be doing it.
Well, I'm okay with that too.
I mean, look, you and I both have a level of moral approval that's beyond most people.
Yeah.
But still, you're deploying 1,300 horsepower on the street. You're probably not doing something that the neighbors will be okay with.
Probably not. And it's an interesting thing you bring that up is when I was a kid, hot rodding was a big thing. Beach Boys were in Southern California. All the songs about all the neat cars, right? And you would have a car and you'd come out of the Steak and Shake or In-N-Out Burger, you do a burnout. People, they'd scream and thumbs up. Now it's like, F you, what's the matter with you? They shake your fist, they call the police. It's like a completely different attitude as far as people don't seem to enjoy your exhibition of speed anymore like they did when I was a kid.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of videos of people crashing and doing.
Well, it ruins more. There was a video 4 weeks ago. A guy had an LS swapped M3 and he left a car show and he's going a straight line and he accidentally like 1-2 shift burnout, crashed into a building, and rolled the car, like went up on a lawn, rolled the car, and I think it like the consequences are more frequent because of video and the police presence at car shows. So you get a car show shut down, you hit people, you mess up the scene, I think.
It's the outrage machine takes over.
Also that.
And I'm not saying necessarily that it's unjustified outrage. Like if you're not into cars and this is going on and they crash into your business, I get it. Like you're going to be annoyed. But once it's not just the people who were there to see it. Once now there's a cell phone video, it gets shared. Look at this fucking asshole. Then it's look at that asshole. Then it's like, this is happening all over our town. And then, and then
probably isn't, but okay.
It probably is. Well, I just had an experience. I mean, I just had this exact experience with, I'll just fucking say what it was, with Pagani of all people. I went to go drive the new Pagani, and they said specifically these guys are from Italy. They don't know local roads. I do, so I said, here's where we want to go. This will be the best for capturing footage and film of the car. Okay, right. We don't want to go there. Why? Because it's dangerous. Why do you think it's dangerous? Because look at this video, and pulled up a video of a car crash that happened there like a month ago.
Okay.
Now, like, yeah, it's a car crash. It's a road. Car crashes happen on roads. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so this person then, they didn't feel safe going there with an expensive car because a crash happened. And they only know about it because it was on video and widely shared.
Is there a road in the world that hasn't had a crash?
No, of course not. Of course not.
So
and the roads that they wanted us to go on have homes, cyclists, commuters, and where I wanted to go, which was, yes, admittedly near where this crash happened, has none of those things.
See, when I drive fast, I drive 45 minutes out of town.
So we do.
A country road that has almost no traffic on it. I memorize all the driveways and cross streets, and I slow down when I get to them.
Sure.
And I go out there and I drive very fast, I think in a very safe way. And I've been doing that my entire life since I was 15 years old. And I've never killed anybody.
It's time and place, situal awareness, and some sort of moral compass for the fact that people live there.
Yes.
It's not that hard.
It's not that hard. It's amazing how people don't have that kind of common sense.
For sure.
Like the guy that crashed in the building.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But just like, not everyone leaving a car show and lighting up the rears is Steve Dinan. Most of them are very, very far from Steve Dinan, even if they may have bought a lot of your products to put on their car.
A lot of Mustang GTs.
The moral outrage has certainly increased a lot in the acceptability.
Well, the sharing of content for clout, however you want to call it, has accelerated that so rapidly.
No, like I get videos emailed to me from customers. I put all your stuff in the car, and I went out at 2 o'clock in the morning on the highway in Dallas, Texas, and I did 212 miles an hour. And they have a video in their car, and they're going, by cars.
Don't do that.
I'm going, okay, cool. I mean, what do you say to that? It's like, and they do it on the highway. Yeah. Like I go out and find these 2-lane roads in the middle of nowhere where if I lose control, I wind up in a field with some cows. Knock down some barbed wire, and that's about the only thing I'm going to hit. Maybe is a cow or a barbed wire fence, but I don't do it on the highway.
That's a Texas. That's a Texas.
Is that a Texas thing on the
Florida
highway?
Is the highway rule. That's what they've got there.
Yeah.
Big turbos, small brakes. That's how they do it in Texas.
I had a customer that had a house in apartment in Miami and a house over in Tampa, and whatever
Alligator Alley.
Alligator Alley. He called me up. He had a 7 Series with a turbo and stuff, and he goes, "You told me the speed governor is and I hit 189. It won't go any faster." And he's like commuting back and forth from. I won't mention his name. He's a famous celebrity.
We just put it that way. We've had a bunch of BMW press cars that supposedly had speed limiters, but then easily went past them.
Yeah.
So what is the deal with that? They just print that on the sticker, even though it's bullshit.
Well, the 155 governor is no longer 155.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, 20 years ago, they had I've heard this anecdotally, so I don't know this for a fact. I'm not a lawyer in Germany. But I've heard that the government in Germany wanted to put a speed limit on cars.
Of 155.
Well, just a speed limit, period. Yeah. And all the German car companies lobbied and said, look, we have the best cars in the world because we have the Autobahn and we can drive faster. And as soon as you make us all go 80 miles an hour, then all of our cars will turn into American cars and nobody will want to buy them anymore. It's pretty much the gist of the conversation.
Said that exactly like that.
Probably exactly like
that. It's valid, too.
It's a very German thing to say, but it's probably true, too.
Yeah.
So they negotiated a 155-mile-an-hour governor. with the German government. And I'm told that Porsche said, no, I won't do it, but Mercedes and BMW and Audi and Volkswagen all agreed to this. And somehow Porsche didn't get forced into doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is either. Okay. But anyway.
You will not limit the Porsche.
Yeah. So anyway, so slowly over time, the 155 turned to 158, then the 162, and my new M4 does 168 stock on the Governor. It has a Governor.
It does. Have
It's
you
just
hit it?
13. Yeah, but it's turned off now.
Yeah.
And that car will do 192.
What'd I tell you?
Yeah.
What did I tell you before we did this?
Sorry.
I told you. You won't even know. You won't even know you're banging on the table.
All right.
That's why I put the sign.
Yeah. Anyway, it will do 192, 194.
Yeah. Okay.
It's only got 700 horsepower, so it's 750. So it's.
Are you hitting? What's the wall?
Wind resistance.
Wind. Yeah.
It just
Okay.
won't go any faster. So.
I read something on Carbon's website that I'd never heard, a term I've never heard of before, and there are probably about 8 people in the listening audience that'll go, you're a moron for not knowing what this is. The term was tune stacking.
Oh, yeah, tune stacking, yeah. That's not a mention of me. That's something I got asked to comment on.
Uh-huh. But it's something that people do and that you don't do.
I've done some tune stacking. I never heard the term until recently.
Okay.
It didn't have its own vernacular, but it does now. Tune stacking is I put software in the car.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the software to make it make any more power, so I put a piggyback box on top of the software.
And how does the car know when to listen to which one and when?
It listens to both simultaneously. This is why people blow up cars.
Yeah, I'm already
Tune
confused.
stacking is a really great way to break your car.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because basically you've already extracted a lot of power out of the software, and then because the software is smart enough to tell you that you shouldn't turn it up anymore, we're going to lie to the software so we can turn it up more.
Oh, okay.
And circumvent whatever it's trying to do to save you from yourself.
Got it.
And that's what tune stacking is.
And that's when the rods exit the engine.
Yeah. Now
Got
you can
it.
do a good job of tune stacking. Like you can do tune stacking with a meth kit, where you have a smart controller that when the meth is flowing, it turns the piggyback on and turns it up. And if the meth has a problem or it runs out of meth, it lowers it back down to the software. And that's a safe way to tune stack.
Got it.
But what people have a tendency to do is they act like the meth is never going to go bad. And I'm always going to be running on race gas with meth. And they stack 3 or 4 things together until it makes 1,000 or 1,200 horsepower, and then one of them is empty or one of them fails. And then that's when the rods come out the side of the motor.
Sure.
Wow. So
I don't like meth. Do you like meth?
I'm not a huge fan of meth, but it does work. I mean, it does make a lot of power. I mean, there's no doubt.
I'm flipping that for social media.
I just don't like.
I mean, it does work.
I'm not. I just like those added. It just seems like a lot of headaches.
It's very corrosive. It
going.
requires a lot of maintenance. I've been playing around with it for 3 years, trying to make one that can't break the car. It's very hard to do because they're not reliable devices. Meth kits. So I've made a processor that does exactly what I said. Determines if the meth is flowing, and not by.
It's called the Tune Stacker 4000.
Yeah. Well, what we did is instead of using like what other people do, they use like current flow, the electric pump, to see if the meth is flowing, but that's not reliable too. We actually put a little turbine in the meth discharge.
Okay.
And a little turbine measures meth flow.
Oh.
And we went back to a processor, said, is it flowing enough meth to be safe? And if so, we're going to leave the power turned up. If not, we're going to turn down proportional to the turbine RPM.
That seems interesting.
It's making a $3,000 meth kit out of a $1,000 meth kit, so it's smart. So it's smart enough not to kill the car, but the engines are $20,000, $30,000.
Is it just like a little bit that goes inside of a hose?
It's inline in a hose.
Yeah.
It's got a little turbine wheel in it, and the meth flows through it, and it's got a little RPM counter, and it goes to a processor. But the sensor is $400, and the processor to count it is $1,000, and then you have to add that to the meth kit. Then you have to have logic to turn the boost up and down, and so you can do that in a lot less expensive way, but it's normally not reliable. My engine shop is full of engines to prove that.
So you want to buy a $3,000 meth kit or a $20,000 engine when your meth kit blows up your engine?
Yeah. That's the deal, yeah. And I much prefer just a larger engine like the M4, and I didn't bring it because of the price point, but we have a Stroker 3.2-liter motor for that.
Oh, you do?
Yes,
Nice.
and then it's combined with a big turbo. And the reason we didn't put the big turbo in now is the turbo has 1,000 RPM of turbo lag.
Oh,
and I love the response characteristics of the car. It's so user-friendly, especially in traffic and around town. But when we add the bigger engine, it makes more exhaust flow. And more exhaust flow spins the bigger turbo up at almost the same rate as the smaller engine.
Oh, so it brings that back
down.
down
back down to 400. So we're combining the two together, but the engine's $25,000 stroked, and the turbos are $10,000 installed. So we're talking $35,000 at a whole
Plus
kit.
Plus I bring you my car that already has an engine in it, right? Or you sell?
That's on top of the car.
That's on top of the car.
On top of this package. This package we have now is just over $20,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just over $20,000, that entire package, suspension, aero, wheels, everything. It more than doubles the price.
Right.
Now it adds another 110 horsepower, so the 735 winds up being 845.
Yeah.
And without meth. And it has great torque with the big displacement. It's just a wonderful car to drive. But now my $25,000 package turns into a $60,000 package.
For 130 horsepower.
Yeah, and you can put meth on it for $1,000.
Sure.
And add the same 100 horsepower. You just have to do this to make sure it doesn't blow up.
Yeah, but you can still do the same brag on the forum.
Yes.
The forum post looks the same.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. The meth will do the same thing for less money. It's just a lot less reliable.
Yeah.
Now you can also add meth on top of the motor, and you can make 1,000.
Go back to the Zach. You were just there. The engines. You've got some. You've got some good. So you got my favorite stroker motor of all time, the S65. Is that similar to the one you used to sell?
It's exact same
same
I still
engine.
make them.
Oh, great! Yeah,
they were $25,000 20 years ago, and now they're $30,000 because of inflation of all the cost of all the parts.
Well, they were a value at 25 though.
Yeah,
they're rad.
So.
That 4.6 is a beast.
Yeah, I mean everything in life is 25% more. Even our racing budget went 25% in the last 2 years. So it's
and then you've got the 5.8 liter V10 stroker kit, which I would really like to have a go in one of those.
Yes,
and is that just nasty?
It is.
Is it still drive like usable?
It's completely usable, just like the 65.
Really?
Yeah, neat car. We also made a 6-liter version of that.
Really?
With 2-ring short pistons, long rods, like we ran the prototype race car with Ganassi, with racing cams, and it makes 800 naturally aspirated.
Whoa! Really?
Yeah.
And you just throw that in an M6?
Yeah.
What else can you put it in?
What do you mean? What else could you put in?
I mean, will it fit in anything else?
Well, you can probably put it in an M3, but it's kind of nose heavy with that big motor. But you put that in an M5, and I would argue it's way better than any modern turbo car. It's got instant throttle response with 10 throttle bodies, and just it's my favorite engine of all time. A large displacement V10. The sound, the torque, the power.
Does it sound more like a Huracan or R8, or more like a Viper?
It sounds like a big Formula One car.
Really?
Turning less RPM. It's got this really raspy, high RPM kind of just cool technical sound to it. It's just...
Didn't Mike Essa put a V10 in an E46, a white one?
Yes.
I mean, that'd be a fun shoehorn
so
project.
we could make an 800 horsepower E46. That sounds usable, don't you think?
I'll call you if
how
I'm alive.
How does that compare to like the Judd V10? Same kind of idea?
I think a Judd V10 is a much smaller displacement race engine, right?
I think it is, yeah.
This is a 6-liter motor. So
Yeah,
we basically took
Judd's a 4-liter.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a 6-liter engine.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah.
And that's 36K plus a running
well, you got to put
M5
dry
or
sump on
M6
it to be able to run the long rods and the short pistons and
Oh,
race cams.
right.
And you take the hydraulic lifters, put solid lifters and buckets and shims. I mean, it's a...
But again, that's not. But this isn't a crate engine. This is applied to my existing.
Yeah, you
engine.
bring me a worn out V10,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
replace everything in it but the castings.
Yeah.
And yeah.
What do you need
fact,
to
there's a
back
video-
up that kind of performance? Do you need to upgrade the gearbox or the clutch? Or
No, what's
anything like
interesting is because it's a natural aspirated motor, it doesn't make torque like a turbo. So the gearbox will take it.
that? Cool.
I'm working on a project.
That'd be a
like,
fun thing to blow $36,000 on.
Yeah.
for
well,
sure.
it's another like 15 with the dry sump and the brace.
And then the install.
Oh, wow, you're in
yeah,
there.
It's
You've ended up
really
with a very expensive. Can you then convert the SMGs to manuals?
Yeah, you can do that.
They
too.
do that?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
still make them.
That's
Is the customer for this, like, one, how many customers for these do you get a year? And is it a person who is dyed in the wool, loves BMW, or they love Dinan, or they like having Franken cars of all kinds?
You know, we don't do very many of those kind of cars. I mean, maybe a half a dozen a year. You know, people that want to spend that kind of money on an old car. Like we just did a prototype engine S62 and a E39 M5.
Oh, you did?
Sold,
I was
yeah.
going to ask if you've made any more of those DP
I just
engines.
did another one last year.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So I
and
get
you can
one
make
at
that
a-
engine streetable, like no
Oh, yeah.
problem?
Yeah, it's really fast.
That rules.
So I'm working on a project right now. If you can Google Group 5. I don't know if it'll come up right or not.
What is the biggest engine you can put in a Z1?
No, that's
Like
not,
an
that's not
S54?
Dinan.
Is that probably the biggest?
There it is. No, maybe that's not it. That looks like
Is
it
it
on the right.
GRUPPE?
Anyway, what they're doing is they're trying to do a Singer kind of thing. So they're taking old E24 6 Series, good looking car.
Yeah, shark nose.
And we're putting 800 horsepower V10 in it.
Oh, so that's what I'm talking about.
That's going to be the application for the motor.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing I'm talking about.
And they're doing really cool little tasteful flares. It's going to be like a Singer. It's going to be like $1 million or $1.2 million.
Wow.
Transaxle, carbon fiber, structure reinforced, but also classic car looking like gauges and aerodynamics. So it kind of looks like a cross between a 3.5 CSL Batmobile and
these.
Yeah, no, that's an old Alpina car. I mean, they may not have anything up on the web.
Yeah.
Yet, but I gave them a proposal, so they're coming up with the concept of what they want the car to look like, and I'm building the whole thing, the chassis, the motor, everything. And we're going to do like 24 cars a year, like 2 cars a month kind of thing. And
are there enough donor cars for that?
Oh, there's a lot of, because you can run a 635 or an M6, it's the same chassis.
Yeah,
and we're only using the frame.
Can you do like a 735? Like
sure, you can do a 735.
The super sleeper, like early 80s 735 would be.
Yeah, I mean,
is there any use for the quote 50 V12, the BMW from the 850 or the 750? Anything that's like worth keeping those around for?
No.
Yeah.
It's an old 2-valve hydraulic, big, long, heavy motor. The V10 is so much better.
Can you put the V10 in an 8 Series?
Yes.
Oh, didn't someone just do that?
I don't know. That would be a neat car.
No. Someone look up E31 BMW V10.
See, there's us kissing the bricks at Indy.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's cool too. But let's talk about V10 E31s.
Yeah.
No, the guy did one. I think it was
Rain Speed Shop.
Yeah. So it's like silver or grayish. Yeah, this guy did
He just
one.
needs an 800 horsepower V10.
Well, he could do it. But actually, I think it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's neat.
This guy also had, and look, it looks like he swapped most of the interior from that E60 M5 into the inside of the car too. That thing looks fucking cool. Yeah. I would very much like to drive that. And I'm pretty sure we stored this guy's other car at South Bay. He had that 3.0 CS that had an S54 powertrain in it that was pretty rad. That looks great, though.
Well, we're doing a hydraulic version of this car, hydraulic lifter, mild detuned wet something that's going to make like, 650 horsepower.
Well, in that little car, that's a lot.
In the 6 Series. And then we're also doing the 800 horsepower solid lifter dry sump, so you get, version A, version B kind of
That's
thing.
awesome.
And it's got a little wing on the back like an old 3.5 CSL with a little roof spoiler that goes down over the wing. So it's
nice air dam in the front. Something.
Yeah. So it's going to be it's really cool looking. He sent me artist renderings of it. I should have brought one with me. The guy's name is Tom Zajac, and he's trying to find funding for the company now is the problem. He's struggling with, because it's a lot of money to build.
Sure.
24 cars a year that are $1 million a car. You're going to have to have a lot of capital up front to get that going.
I mean, but the market is, the market is there for modernized 80s and 90s neoclassics.
No, and we're going to have a manual gearbox in it.
Yeah.
A 6-speed, like the one you talk about that came on the V10.
Yeah.
And so we're going to take the trailing arm suspension, put upper and lower wishbone on, so it handles like a modern car, but it looks like an antique car.
Yeah.
With modern
It's
electronics.
like the Alphaholics thing, which no one's mad about. You're choosing a gorgeous coupe, a great looking car, and just bringing it up to like perfecting every sensation and a little bit of joy and adrenaline people get from driving it, and people will like that. It's expensive though.
No, it's all hand built. It's going to be super expensive, but it's going to be a one off. And several people say, why doesn't the guy just buy a McLaren? I said, well, if he wanted a McLaren, he'd buy one for one.
It's
$1.2
not.
million.
It's a completely different thing, and it's definitely also not either or. It's both.
Right. That's what I was going to say. The guy probably has a McLaren in the garage, and he wants this also. Like he wants his retro modern hot rod, and he wants his modern hot rod, right? Because he's got enough money to buy $1 million car,
right?
Someone
who's bought a Singer or a Gunther or any one of these, one of those Chimera launch things, they've already been through the standard stuff.
Yeah.
They're not. I
think this is a lot more interesting.
Oh, it certainly is. But I mean,
that kind of feats your requirement if I can. It's like an old raw tactile kind of car, but it satisfies me too because it has all the modern things to make it really fast. So it kind have it all. I think
I would love to have a go in that. I bet it's going to be great.
Yeah. But we'll bring you one if we can get it done.
Please do if you build one. We've worked. We had a customer that had a 635 and needed some light restoration work done on though. The bills were horrifying. It was such an expensive car to have things done on.
Yeah, this won't be bad because this is a natural aspirated V10. You probably
It
have like
wasn't
a Motec
engine
in
stuff.
It.
It was, chrome window trim is $3,000 and stuff like that.
Well, that is the thing, too. We are going to make the glass flush like a modern car.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we're going to make custom glass for the car. And so that's probably going to be like a $3,000.
That's where you get to that.
That's how you get to the $1.2 million. We're going to put carbon
100%.
fiber reinforcements in the door for structural reasons as well as making it look cool.
Yeah.
So it's, have you seen the Singer Turbo?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's going to be that kind of style, but a BMW version of it.
Cool.
With a
Singer
V10.
Turbo looks good.
Yeah, I like it too.
Should we go to the Patreon while we have probably a lot for Steve,
We have
right?
18 or 16. I chopped out some ones that we covered.
All right, well, let's focus on the ones for Steve, and then we'll come back to general stuff if we have time. Of course, we've got the Patreon is up, and you should get in on it at patreon.com/the Smoking Tire Podcast. That is where you can ask us questions for the show, get the show early, watch the live stream, eliminate ads from your viewing diet, and, of course, get an extra podcast every single month. Let's see. Steve has already answered David Bodenstein's question. You do like the F80, the modern M4s, the turbo cars.
I do.
Yeah. You're pro that.
I'm pro modern cars. And up to the point where they weigh 5,000 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. And he says, is the auto M4 terrible or decent? Well, the F80 was dual clutch, and now we've got, right? And now we've got the, so do you have a preference, one or the other?
Automatic's better.
You think the automatic's better?
A lot better.
Okay.
It's faster shifting. It's smoother. And part of the problem with the double clutch, the clutch left is kind of, when you leave traffic, it's kind of jerky. It's hard to be smooth with. With the torque converter, it takes it up smoothly. And the car's nice in traffic. It does everything right. I mean, it's just really good. It's
I
heavy.
enjoy the
gearbox is heavy.
snappiness of the dual clutch's downshifts, although I will concede that everything you're saying is true.
Yeah. It's just a better gearbox. And even the race car has it. It makes it a good race car, too.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay. So, Sean says, what cars are currently in Steve's personal garage, and what are your favorite non-BMWs to tinker with?
Boy, I have a lot of cars. Boy, I have the M8. I have this M4. I have a new M2. I have an Audi RS5, an Audi RS3, and Audi RS6 because we're starting on Audi parts, so you'll see some Audis from me next year. I like the RS5 a lot, the new competition version that comes with three-way hydraulic dampers on it.
We had one of those. It was cool.
Yeah, it's a nice car.
Yeah.
It has some things that could have been done better, I'll put it that way. But we're gonna turn it into a better car. Let's put it that way. So we're going to keep the three-way dampers on it, but improve the coilover kit. It does some. The interesting thing about Volkswagen Audi Group, I love the styling of the car actually better than the M4. I love the seats are more comfortable. I think the user interface is better inside the car. So I think for a daily driving car, it's honestly a better car than the M4. But BMW always goes this little bit extra on all the little performance things that make the BMW just a better performance car.
Yeah.
Has a little more power, a little bit better weight distribution, a little bit less overall weight. And even little things like they take the rubber bushings in the rear upright and they replace them with what's called Lemforder bearing, which is like a through ball joint. Take the rubber out of the rear suspension so the car's predictable on the limit. And this is like things that cost $50 when you make a car. But BMW is just very detail oriented that way. So we're going to take those bearings and we can buy them directly from the company. I think they're made in Holland. BMW just use them. Also, Porsche uses them on GT3s and GT2s and Turbo S's, the same bearings.
Okay.
So all the high-end German car companies use these bearings to get rid of play from rubber. We're going to put those in the RS5.
Okay.
We're going to make a stroker motor, a 3.2-liter V6 turbo to make it 700 horsepower like the M4.
I'll be interested to see how that sounds.
It's going to be a neat car, and it has some good things. It has an upper and lower wishbone in the front instead of a strut, so the suspension geometry is better in the front, so the front will have more traction. So I have high hopes for the car. So that's what I'm working on right now is a lot of Audi stuff. I'm also taking the stroker motor I told you with the big turbos.
Yeah.
I'm putting the M2, so that's the next car I'll bring you.
Oh, good.
So it's going to be an 825 horsepower M2.
That's going to be so sketchy. I drove the stock car has way more power than tire.
Yeah, well,
just stock.
Well, we actually made functional aero in the car.
Oh, good.
And big tires like this car, and the suspension like this car, because this suspension fits on the M2 as well. It's the same chassis.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on right now is a crazy M2 and an RS5 is the next two things up from me. But I have 14 cars right now, so I don't.
Well, because everything you're developing, for you buy one.
Yeah, I buy one to develop it, and then I do the media tour, and if I like the car, I like the M8, and I like the M4, I keep it, and if I don't, I sell it and get the next one. And
Got it. Aiden Squires, imagine it's 1987 and you're looking for a Euro third-party tuning company to upgrade your 325i. Do you pick Hartke, Schnitzer, Alpina? Who are you sending your car to in 1987?
Well, I was tuning in 1970. I think you should bring it to me, but
What a dick.
You had a kit.
I had
The Turbo E30
I had a
M3.
much better product than all three of those tuning companies, but Alpina's more of like an OEM.
Yeah.
It's small batch company now than an actual aftermarket tuner, but also their stuff is the most refined and probably the best quality. So if you're going to buy one, the B3 would probably be the best car.
Yeah. They do great road cars. That's what they do. Andreas is awesome.
They do.
And I really like their cars a lot.
I got for a ride down the Autobahn with Andy Votenstein once in a B5.
Yeah.
We went to dinner.
Yeah.
And he wanted to show me how stable the car was, and we're doing like 195 miles an hour on the Autobahn, and he's like weaving back and forth. Look how good the car handles.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
He picked me up at the airport in a B8 Grand Coupe with 800 horsepower, and he hit almost 200 miles an hour on the way back to the factory.
Yeah.
The guy was awesome. He's on point.
On the way to dinner and back.
The guy was so cool. I really, if he ever, I don't think he'll ever let it go, but he did an Alpina Z1 that I would love to buy. It was a concept that they never really did, and I'd love to buy it off him. But
their
he'll never let it go.
M6 race car had my engine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they did have the M6.
So we had a relationship
back
for a
in
while.
like 2011, right?
Yeah, 2011. They won the GT Masters Championship in Germany with a Dinan race motor in it.
Yeah.
Actually, that's out of the Ganassi prototype car. We took that engine and put it in his GT car. It was really awesome.
I saw that car when I was over there. It's still in the collection.
Yeah, it's a neat car.
I think we already sort of talked about Jim Conna's question. Okay. Zax M3 says, I currently have an F36 430i. Is that the current one or one before current? I don't know. Who knows what? I don't know what F30.
Well, F would be the last generation.
The last
New cars
one, right?
are Gs.
Okay,
Yeah,
so 430i. It's a 4-cylinder. It's a great daily, but feels a little tired. Do you have any advice for the 4-cylinder BMWs with around 87,000 miles on it? Major service? I don't know. Do you do anything with those 4-cylinder cars?
I don't. I find that people that want to buy modifications typically buy the car with the biggest engine already, and then they look for modifications. So I find the market very small for those kind of cars.
Sure.
So we try not to do those.
Sure.
It's just a business decision, unfortunately. It's not that I don't like them.
Yeah. Sean says, Steve, what cars do you think get it the most right from the factory?
As far as a brand?
Model cars?
I don't know. I think BMW M and Porsche RSs are always the most buttoned up, best designed cars when they come out of the factory, as a general rule.
Yeah. Var the Var says, some enthusiasts are pining for more feel and engagement rather than more horsepower and grip. Is it possible for the aftermarket to step in and fix the numbness of some modern cars? For example, could your engineers retune e-pass systems to provide more feedback and feel more like traditional hydraulic steering?
Well, there's two ways to answer that question. One is I think when you'll drive this M4, you'll see the engagement is there. And the tactile feel a lot like an old car. So a lot of that is not the steering. A lot of that is how the suspension is done. Mm-hmm. So we've done a lot in this car to make the suspension feel connected to the road and the tire like an old car. Now that makes a little bit more noise, makes it a little bit stiffer, but I think the connection is really there. Mm-hmm. But the problem with the electric steering and everything else in the cars is so integrated into the stability control and keeping in the center lane and the lane departure, all that kind of stuff. Is it's so difficult to take that stuff out and not get just a plethora of warnings on the dashboard.
Yeah.
So it could be done. Is it worth the money? Probably not. You'd probably have to spend 6 months on software to make it compatible to work, and then you'd lose all the extra features that it gives you. So probably not going to happen.
Yeah. I find that good electric steering feels better than hydraulic steering anyway. There's a lot of pining for hydraulic steering, but a really good electric system I think is better.
I don't think it's any worse. A lot of people think hydraulic is better. We run electric steering in all the race cars.
Yeah.
The prototype cars are all electric power assist.
Yeah.
But I think what makes it numb is not necessarily the fact that it's electric versus hydraulic. It's the fact they try and make it give steering wheel shaking feedback and lane departure. They have motors running things. I think that's what makes it feel numb, not the fact that it's electric. Because race cars have electric steering in them.
Nathan says, what is Steve's thoughts on the S65 engine and its rod bearing and other mechanical failures? Was it negligence on BMW's part, consumer error, or internet overexposure?
A little bit of all the above.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely the bearings had problems. BMW got it wrong. The internet blew it way out of proportion, and a lot of customers didn't maintain the cars well, didn't change oil enough, let the oil get low, took it to the racetrack, and it lost oil pressure, and so it's all the above. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of very good aftermarket replacement bearings now from 2 or 3 different companies, and we sell them too, where you can just slip those bearings in there and make that problem go away. But if you let it run low on oil and you go to the racetrack and it goes around a corner, it loses oil pressure, it's going to go bad no matter what bearing you put in it.
Yeah.
And there was also a lot of hype about how they all went bad and they didn't all go bad.
Well, outrage machine.
Yeah.
Again, same thing with, I think Porsche IMS bearings was like a 1% fail rate. I mean, it was a very low percent, but the consequence of failure was so high.
Yes.
It was, they go bad and you need a $25,000, $30,000 engine rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to do if you have an S65 or an S85, it's the same bearing, is to do your Blackstone oil test, and as soon as you get metal in it, slip new bearings in the car. It's a lot less money to drop the oil pan and put bearings in and wait for the engine to go bad.
Yeah. I do a Blackstone test every time I get the oil changed in my Spider. It's cheap.
Yeah.
Cheap reassurance.
Yeah, I mean, my new M4, it has a very good oiling system with 3 pickups in it now, so it takes a lot of G's. But Car and Driver took it last month to the skid pad at Chrysler Proving Ground and ran around circles for a couple hours at 1.1 G's. So I was curious to see if there was any. So I did a Blackstone test when I got back to California before I brought it down to you guys, and it was good.
Yeah.
There was no metal in the oil, so the oiling system is good. I think it's a good thing to do once in a while anyway, especially if you're tracking a car.
Yeah.
Especially with a wet sump system, because oiling is always an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely get your Blackstone test. Zach, saves Joel's question for off air. I'm sure Steve can answer that. Chris says, that we already. Chris, Carbahn does tune cars besides BMW. And they do Audi and Mercedes also. So we don't need to ask that one. Although, what was the thought when you restarted a tuning company, Carbahn, and you said, okay, we're going to do more than BMW now?
Yeah.
Was that just because you felt in the past that you were limited by the baggage of your brand that you could only do BMW, or did it just seem like other companies were making products worth playing with?
A little bit of both. In the old days, I didn't think the Audis and the Mercedes were very good, but the new RS Audis and the AMG Mercedes have gotten to be really good cars, as we were talking about downstairs, and they're on par with the BMWs. I would still give the BMW M's a little bit of an edge, in overall product quality and performance, but they're very close. So that made it so they were interesting. Mm-hmm. They weren't interesting to me before. And the other thing is, we do the same thing for your whole life, and I've been doing this 44 years. You kind of want to do something different. It's like eating the same meal every day.
Sure.
And so I thought it would be fun. And the other thing that's been interesting about it is I said I looked at I have a couple of Porsches as well, and I looked at these Lem Porter bearings. I looked at them in the M cars, and I went to the Audi and go, they don't have them. Well, here's an opportunity. I can make an Audi handle like a Porsche or a BMW. Mm-hmm. And so I'm cross-pollinating. Each one of them has its technology that's better. I'm cross-pollinating the technology from one brand to another and making all the brands better. And I'm learning from each one of the OEMs because they're all doing something slightly different.
Sure.
So that's fun too, because they all have their own perspective, and in some cases they're better, in some cases they're worse.
Yeah.
It's not that one car is always better in every area. That's not the case.
Well, and then they each have their own models that are better and worse at certain things.
Yeah. But even the technology within the models, their approach is different.
Yeah.
Do you have to expand, or did you have to expand your team size as well? Like back when you were only BMW, to branch out into other OEMs, would you have to add an exponential number of staff to start doing R&D on those cars?
I definitely will. I haven't yet because Carbahn's a startup and it's small. So Dinan is still used to be bigger than Carbahn is now, just because they don't have enough revenue to have that much staff and stay in business. Mm-hmm. But so what I'm doing is I'm doing all the BMWs first, and I'm doing Audis, and then I'm doing Porsches, and then I'm doing Mercedes. And it's going to take me 4 or 5 years to get through them all. At that point, the staff will continue to grow, so at that point I can maintain them all and keep them moving forward at the same rate. That's the plan. But
is it more important to offer packages for new cars as they come out, or to offer stuff for E46 M3s and E39 M5s?
Yeah, there's almost no market for old cars. It's always the new car, and not just that I like new cars, which I do. People who have money to modify cars have money to buy new cars. And so they are the customers. When I owned Dinan, 80% of my revenue was the current model.
Right.
Wow.
And 20% was the older cars.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's really changed.
Yeah.
So, the other thing, too, is people will spend about 25% of the value of the car in modifying it. So that's why that package is $21,000. It's a $110,000 car. It's like 20% of the car's value. When you get to 25, sales just they stop, or they slow way down. If you take a car that's worth $15,000, what can you do to it?
Yeah.
I mean, the engine overhaul that it probably needs is probably more than the car is worth. Mm-hmm. Unless it's just a labor of love and you love the car and you want to restore it, which people do.
Yeah, yeah.
And I get those.
You'll get some of that. Well, it may if BMW makes all of their car lineup plug-in hybrid, it may drive people backwards.
That's what I think. I think the previous generation people are going to get driven into that if they all go hybrid because of the 1,000 pounds of weight, and I think they're going to become collector's items almost immediately, which is why I'm saving my M8. I'm working on a 2002 turbo right now.
Cool.
Original 2002 turbo, 1974. I think it is.
4, yeah.
So a guy brought in this country, and the turbo went bad, and it's an old KKK, and it doesn't have a wastegate, those old cars.
Okay.
So you can't buy the turbo anymore. So somebody put a modern Garrett on the thing without a wastegate.
Okay.
I won't say what shop did it. And they told the guy to watch the boost gauge, not overboost it. That was their boost control methodology. So he left the shop and blew the thing up immediately by running thing made like 30 pounds of boost instead of like 7. So they shipped me the engine to rebuild, and I rebuilt the engine. And then he calls me up and says, "Well, it has all these issues. It's not going to last." And so he ships me the entire car. So I put an inlet restrictor on it to control the boost. Then I put a split-second electronic injection system on it to feed fuel because it makes boost a lot sooner. Then I put a digital programmable distributor on it to retard the timing when it goes in the boost. And so I've got like 6 months into this car now, like $30,000 into it. But it's really cool, and it's got like 14,000 original kilometers on it. This thing looks new. There's not a mark in the interior, the exterior.
Yeah.
It's a car worth spending some money on. I don't know what those things are worth. Probably 100,000.
Probably at least 100 grand. Yeah, they're pretty rare.
Yeah, so honestly, we're losing money fixing it, but we're all having a lot of fun doing it.
There's marketing value in it. And
we're going to shoot some videos of it running on the dyno and stuff. And it's pretty neat.
Speaking of expensive old cars, did you see this auction that ended a week ago?
Oh, yeah, Dinan S3 number 23. 117.5 plus buyer's premium.
And it's got 78,000 miles on it. That's a lot of miles for
that's more than the car cost new with it. That's neat.
I mean, it's a nice example. It's in looks like pretty good shape. It's in a good color.
And those are the wheels we were talking about.
Yeah.
And
the wheels in the car downstairs, I don't know if you picture the new wheels.
Are a modern version of that.
We just ran the spoke out to the lip and made a modern version of the new wheel because we like that style.
Yeah.
And we just did an upgrade on it. I don't know. Those are Titan wheels. Those are not. They're not on the website yet.
Oh.
They're only on the car unless you have a picture of the car.
Oh, I'll find one.
But these have held their value and
they're in production right now because we're making them ourselves. And the tooling just got done and they're being forged, and so they should be out like in about 60 days.
Oh, cool.
So you have the only set in the world on that car.
So don't curb them.
Don't curb them.
I'm parking it in the garage tonight.
Yeah.
But we like the wheel, and we wanted to modernize it, so we had the spoke all the way out to the lip, and I think they look cool.
Have you put those wheels on an E46 yet?
No, they're too wide. They won't
they
fit.
I'll try.
You're only making them in M3, M4 sizing?
We're making M2, M3, M4. It fits on all three. Then we're making them for M5, M8.
Oh, okay.
And then we're going to go down to the M340, 240, 440. We're also making a set for the Audi RS5.
You tried a Z3
RS6.
manual yet? New Z3?
I have not.
It's pretty fun.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good little car. It's not a race car, but it's a very nice, fast and fun road car. Yeah.
You need Z4
The Z4, yeah.
So there's the new wheel.
Yeah.
And if any way to zoom in on that, but it's
we don't, but it looks good, and it's on car.
There you go.
I'm sorry, we do.
Yeah,
apparently we do.
See, it's the same wheel, but the spokes go all the way out to the edge. It's
Zach,
the same style.
Our
and
browser's
everything.
no longer supported. How terrible.
Yeah.
No, it's a good looking wheel.
It'll be out in about 60 days, and they're available in what we call that smoky bronze, anthracite gray, and then the traditional silver and black.
Nice.
Is good.
So 4 different colors as well.
So if you've got a modern BMW, Audi, Mercedes, Carbahn's got something for you. You can go to their website, carbahn.com, Carbahn, and they've got tuning stuff. They've got suspension stuff, wheels, brakes, entire engines.
Yeah,
you
carbon
name
fiber
it.
bits these days.
Yes, lots of carbon
You
fiber.
should see our carbon fiber stretch brace on that car. Have you seen that?
I don't know
If you haven't opened the hood on that thing yet?
I haven't yet, no.
Oh, my God.
We'll make sure to get video of it.
It's
Don't worry.
so pretty.
Awesome. Thank you very much for spending time with us today,
Yeah,
Steve.
anytime.
Always a pleasure. Always the good nuggets coming out of this side of the table. And thank you to our patrons for such great questions today. Really appreciate you. We will see you guys next week. Goodbye.